Is it 15 seconds? Good. Okay. Hey, hey, hey. Uh-oh. We are back. We're back because it's my new season of interview on the Trust Radio Network. And we're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to be joined here today with Attorney Heidi Keenan. Nice to meet you. And sometimes my favorite shows are people that I've never met before, because then sometimes you know people too well, you don't know to ask them.
Right.
So,
or there's too much insider knowledge.
Yeah, since you just think everybody knows, and they don't.
That's right.
So,
that's true.
So so before we go first, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Again, our first goal is always to have fun, so have fun. We're going to learn a little bit about you, and I'm going to indulge in my practice of asking people, attorney, how about this attorney? I don't know what that is. We'll talk a little bit about that though, because but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Heidi Keenan. I'm an attorney in the South Suburbs in Matteson, Illinois.
I was going to say city.
Depends who you talk to, what the name is.
I have a woman who works for me. Her name is Ida Matheson. Very similar to that. So, and I know, is that Madison? Is it Matheson? Is it?
Well, the people who've lived there forever, like my husband, would say Madison. Nobody knows where that is. They think you're in Wisconsin. So you have to say Madison. And then everybody goes, oh, yeah, the South Suburbs.
Uh-huh.
So now the people in the village hall have taken to over-pronouncing the T's to make it clear that it is not the one in Wisconsin, but indeed the one in the South Suburbs.
Okay, so that's why I'm not the only one that gets confused about that.
No, it is extremely common.
How far south is it?
It was an hour and 15 minutes
to get here.
And it's probably about 45 minutes south of that.
Okay, so it's a different world then.
Yes.
So, where are you from?
I am originally from North Dakota.
North Dakota?
Indeed.
Huh. I was going to say I don't meet a lot of people from North Dakota, but a lot of people aren't in North Dakota.
That is true. That is true. There are not a lot of us to meet.
Before we get into what brought you here, tell us about where did you go to school? Where did you go to undergrad?
I went to undergrad at North Dakota State University.
So I was going to say, what brought you there? Well, that's a state school.
That's right. And I had my choice of any state school I wanted to go to. So
how many they have?
There's probably about 8, but there was 2 universities at the time. The others were colleges.
I know this because I was in Nebraska a couple weeks ago, and then there was a question on Jeopardy. What's the only? No, it was a question on John Hanson's show. Let's get into his and his question was, what's the only state in the union that does not have a law school? And I just kind of told you it's Alaska, but they don't have a law school. So I was kind of, I would think that in North Dakota, because there's not a lot of people, they didn't have a lot of colleges, but 8 is a lot.
Yes.
So it's good. And then you went to law school? Did you go to law school right out of college?
No, I worked as a construction project manager and design mechanical engineer for 10 years before I went to law school.
What was the engineering? Was that something a family? Was that something you were an engineer? I assume from that was your undergrad degree?
Yes, that was my undergraduate degree. No, it was a good job.
Yeah.
I got kind of bored with it though, especially being a construction project manager. We had the same arguments. Like today's the day on the job site where we're going to talk about issue XYZ, and we have the same argument that we had the last time we did this same kind of job, and we're going again about XYZ. And it got kind of old.
What kind of construction were you involved in?
I did schools and hospitals. I worked for a company that did the controls, the thermostats, and control.
And then you went to law school. Was that something you always wanted to do, or was it something that kind of came out of nowhere, or what drove you to go to law school?
In hindsight, I think I probably always wanted to be a lawyer, but didn't know how to articulate what it was when I was young. At one point, I can remember I always wrote PSQ behind my name when I was really little, like maybe 3rd or 4th grade. And I said, I'm going to have that title someday. Well, I didn't really realize at the time that was a lawyer.
I'm not sure what to this day, what my kids and I argue about that. What's Esquire mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've seen people who are not lawyers use it. They're like, can you use it? I don't know how that works.
I don't know either.
And
Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't.
And I'm trying to look it up, and I can't get a good answer.
Yeah, I don't think there's a definitive answer. So fast forward, I've been working for 10 years, and we refinanced our house, and it was standing outside talking to the lawyer.
When you say we?
My husband and I.
So you were married in, is this in North Dakota, or is this
Here in Illinois.
You moved to Illinois?
I moved to Illinois after undergraduate.
What brought you here to Illinois?
Love.
That's
You knew that was going to be the
I
answer, right?
did see it. I didn't suspect as much. Because you said your husband's from Madison.
Yes, he is.
See what I did?
You did that very well. Over enunciated his piece. They'll be proud.
So if he's from there, I would guess that's what brought you there.
Right.
And so you were already in Illinois when you became an attorney.
Yes.
Where'd you go to law school?
Valparaiso Law School.
What brought you there?
Well, I was kind of equidistant between Valparaiso and downtown, and I visited schools, Valpo and then some downtown, and I just felt more at home at law school in Valparaiso. So that's where I think.
North Dakota.
It could be.
Madison.
It could be that it's that proximity to the cornfields. I don't know.
Well, we all feel at home where we are, where we feel at home.
That's right.
That's the way it works. And so you went part-time to law school? You went full-time?
I quit my job and I went full-time.
Good for you.
Valparaiso didn't have a men's program, so I would have had to have gone during the day anyway. So I just figured better to do this 2 years.
So I went part-time. I went to John Marshall, which is in Illinois.
Right.
And it took me forever to really ask. But, and I went where I felt at home. I'm from the city, so I felt
I can understand that.
And
I think John Marshall and Valparaiso are kind of similar in that
smaller.
They're smaller and they turn out lawyers who are working lawyers, who are going to represent people and really be there doing their job, as opposed to teaching or doing theoretical.
Or sitting in the office and pontificating.
Right, exactly. Writing a broader.
I do say that as a John Marshall attorney, right? We're the guys out there doing the work.
And in Northwest Indiana, it's probably great. So.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So and so you got out of law school and you just started your own practice?
I very briefly was a Cook County State's attorney.
What was it?
I had been a 7-Eleven during law school, and I had had
Tell me what a 7-Eleven is.
A 7-Eleven is somebody who works under supervision and has almost all the rights of an actual attorney under supervision.
So that's would you say that was is that something? So here's what, before I give you that question. I have 2 sons.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest son just passed away.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal.
My youngest is a 3L.
Okay.
And I always like to ask attorneys, what kind of advice would you have for because you were talking about the 7-Eleven program, and not everybody does that. Right. And I assume that, would you recommend that to people in law school to get involved and do things like that?
Absolutely. I say take as many practical, hands-on courses and do as many externships as you can.
And so so what kind of advice would you have for my 2 kids that are new lawyers or going to be a new lawyer? Well, what do you think? What kind of advice would you have for them?
Well, get as much practical experience as they can. Take classes related to the bar exam. Now, if you shouldn't take what you're interested in, but if you don't pass the bar exam,
well, I agree with that. I see the bar exam pass rate has really gone down. I was really shocked when I saw the numbers here in Illinois. And I guess nowadays, when I passed, it was pass-fail.
Yes.
And
yeah.
And now it isn't.
I heard somebody say something about they got a score of whatever the number was, and I'm like, how did you know that? It's going to change.
And I guess
I don't know if I want to know. I think I just wanted to know pass or fail.
Before I took the bar exam, it was the hardest test I ever took. After I passed it, it was the easiest.
Exactly. I took 2 of them, so I. Indiana and Illinois.
You had to take them both. You had to take both of them.
In the order that I took them, yes. Unless I wanted to prove that 50% of my business was in Indiana, and have a physical presence in the state, which I just
In other words, it make it very difficult, especially like Indiana. Like they don't want Illinois lawyers going there. You know, like in Florida, you know, they don't want out of state.
There's
Because
no
New York lawyers, when they come down to Florida, they think, oh, I'll just start my own practice. They don't want you there.
Yeah, I think it's any state that's warm, quite honestly.
Okay, so I did get, not a couple years now, I've been admitted to Tennessee.
Oh.
So, and I thought my son was going to go to Belmont.
Oh.
And so when he kind of was indicating he was going to go there, I started, but you don't have to think about it, which I wouldn't.
Yeah, I can. I don't know if I'd be up for another bar.
I just had to do the character and fitness, which was a chore in itself. You know, doing the character and fitness
Lots of paperwork.
Yeah, and it's one thing when you're younger to talk about your history. You know, when you're my age,
it's a lot more history. Right?
You don't remember what happened 40 years ago. It's because they do ask you every job you ever had, anything you ever did, and you know. I remember one of my ethics professor in law school always said, "It's not what you did; it's what you don't tell them you did." So you got to tell them everything. You know, so be honest and be
absolutely.
So again, both my sons are I'll call them boys, you know. I got to tell you, sitting with my sons at dinner or something, and what we talked about now is kind of thrilling.
Oh, I'm sure.
We've always talked about politics, and they always challenged me since they've been little boys. They always challenged me in my orthodoxy, you know, because I'm kind of a traditionalist, you know, and so they always challenged me. And I always thought it always made me stop and think and kind of have to rationalize why I thought what I thought.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, that's a good thing.
Right.
It's better, challenging me. And so they do that now with the laws, and you know, different things that are going on with the laws. So it's interesting. It's a lot of fun, actually. So, okay, so you know, I always like to talk about your practice. So tell me about your practice.
So after I was a state attorney for a brief period of time, I did open mental practice then in 2005.
How did that? How long were you with the state attorney practice?
6 months.
Okay, so not a long time.
No, I was in criminal appeals, and I was expected to stay there another 3 years, which meant I was sitting in a cubicle writing briefs for 8 hours a day, and I said, nope, there's not enough people interaction here. Can't do it.
You got to do what you like.
That's right.
That's it. The criminal appeals is. I know my son did a internship, I think.
Okay.
He kind of liked it, but he's a different. Everybody's got a different.
Right, exactly. And I enjoyed writing appellate briefs, not every day, all day long.
In a cubicle. By yourself.
For months on end, by myself. No, without any client interaction.
Yeah.
Or any people interaction other than my client.
Yeah. So tell us about your practice now. What's your day look like?
Every day is different, which is what I like. I do veterans disability law, which is kind of unusual. There's not a lot of practitioners in the Chicago area.
I'm going to interrupt you. Talk about that. How did you get involved in that?
So I had been, and I still do practice some Social Security disability, and how I got into that was also kind of just with happenstance.
Well, I think it's interesting how people get into what they do. A lot of times it's because, and that's why I always ask about your first job, because a lot of times attorneys, like whatever your first job is, that's what you wind up doing.
Right. That's true. I see that.
That's what I do, and then and so I usually ask that. You had already volunteered that information. But then when you start your own practice, how do you have this idea about what you're going to do, and then it's like what you really do, right?
Right. And I think I had the idea when I initially went to law school, but then I did some externships and whatnot along the way. I thought, well, I'll do this, I'll do that. State attorney's office, and then I jokingly said I retired after 6 months, and probably 3 or 4 months later, I knew I did not want to be criminal defense work, even though I had a lot of experience on the other side of that. And I just started kind of relying on word of mouth. I worked for 10 years, so I had friends and clients who needed things, and can you write a will for my mom? Can you do this? Can that. So it was just kind of happenstance, the cases I took. And I tried a little bit of everything, and then there were certain areas I said, I'm never doing that again. I think we all have those things that we try.
It's interesting when when you become an attorney, especially like yourself, because you have worked for 10 years. You're not just a kid coming out. You have some experience, and so you have some knowledge. And for me, when I started my own practice, because I got out of law school, I just started my own practice, and very similar to you, right? 6 months, I don't know. And if you're in the people, you weren't really interacting with a lot of attorneys to find out what they were doing.
Exactly.
Right. And even if you did a totally different thing when you got out. And so it's really just trial by error, isn't it?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. A little taste of this, a little taste of that, and figure out what works for you and what doesn't.
In case you help people with veterans disability, what other kind of things?
I also do probate and guardianship and estate planning along with that, and then real estate.
Okay, so I know you're in Madison. Yeah, see how I did that?
Very good.
And that's kind of a smaller town, right?
Yes.
And I got.
But it's glued on to all the other suburbs.
Yeah, so it's kind of
suburban area.
Yeah, I guess it is. Is a lot of your practice local?
Most of the estate planning and probate is probably, relatively speaking, local, meaning the south suburbs. The veterans disability, not suburbs. And
You're absolutely right, though. The south suburbs is a pretty big community.
Right.
Right. I went down to Orland Park.
Okay.
Which isn't too far, right?
No, not.
And I was really surprised. This was just recently. It had been some years since I've been down there. Wow.
Wow. Yes, you don't want to be driving there at Christmas time. That's for sure. If you thought it was busy now.
I was really surprised. It's really grown. It was quite an eye opener for me. It's like, man, things are changing. Things are changing. I tell you, here I am in Lake County. When I was a little boy, Lake County was nothing.
No.
It was farmland. And it's really not too much anymore. Not a lot of farm. Still some farms in Lake County, but I wouldn't call it farmland.
Right.
So, but again, same thing with South Suburbs.
Right.
Used to be out in the sticks.
Yeah, when my husband was living there, it was definitely much more rural than it is now.
If you don't mind me asking, what kind of work does your husband do?
He's a professor.
Uh-huh.
Not a little.
Just curious. Does he travel then in the city? I guess that's not too far. It's not that far.
No, he does.
Yeah, that's not bad. I'm thinking that it's out in the middle of nowhere, and it's really
About
not.
45 minutes.
I have a friend that moved to Romeoville some years ago.
Sure.
And I was, Romeoville? Where the heck is that?
Out in the middle of.
But now it's not. It's not that far away. And you got a lot of highways. You're right in the city. In 45 minutes.
Yeah.
You're in the city.
And everything's filled in between.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing.
It is.
What's your favorite area of law? What that you like to do? What kind of people do you like to help?
I think probably I enjoy the veterans law the most. Very often veterans have been fighting a claim against the VA for many years. By the time they get a lawyer, the approval rate is not very high unless you have help. So finally getting that done for them is part one of this. But then often our cases take a very long time. So they're with me for a long time. So I really get to know them, which is nice. I really like to get to know my clients, and I don't want to be a part of the family, but really know them on a personal level.
I think that's it. I think my practice is similar. And then I work with people for a long time. I try to.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, the veterans, a lot of them don't want to even seek the help that's out there for them.
Right. That is true.
We talk about here in Illinois the veterans exemptions that are available.
Right. For property taxes.
Yeah, for property taxes. And for those who don't know, that if you're 80%, I believe it's 80% disabled as a veteran, you don't pay property taxes anymore. And just to get some of them to stand up, because there's a lot of some of them that more than
I hear that a lot.
I bet you that's true. Talk a little bit about that because they do believe it, don't they?
They absolutely do. They feel that it was part of the deal that it could happen that they could get injured and have some sort of a disability that goes along with their service, and that there's other people who are more elite and doing fine, and they work most of their lives, they have pension, whatever, and it's typically the older ones that I have that more bad attitude. Not for me, it's for the other people. But it's the way the laws are written is so that you are supposed to be able to benefit because you serve your country.
That's an obstacle to overcome, isn't it?
Exactly. It is.
Well, that is interesting. I hear that a lot for anybody who deals with, again, especially with the real estate property taxes.
Yes.
So if you don't claim it, doesn't mean somebody else is losing.
No, not in that case. No, not at all.
You know, and it's the least we can do is as a society, I think, is to take care of those who want
who took care of us
for our country. Yeah, absolutely. So it's like the least we can do is that. So I can see how that can be very fulfilling.
Absolutely.
If I had to ask you, I don't know how you have a lot of interaction with other teams.
It was probably more before COVID, because I am involved with different networking groups and whatnot. And now that's starting to pick up a little bit. But during the COVID years, it was certainly we didn't have a lot of interaction. But I am a true solo, so I am really by myself.
Because I would like to ask attorneys, what do you think makes a good attorney? What do you think makes a good attorney?
I think one that's honest and that tells their clients the truth one way or the other. Not everybody has a good case, and I feel like there are some attorneys, I'm sure, and I'm sure there are in other professions as well, who will say what they think the client wants to hear. That might not be the best way to do it.
That's the best way to do it. I think it's absolutely true. I always like to be I always tell people I like to be straightforward and tell you the truth.
Right. And
I always tell them if I'll lie for you, because I'm not going to do that.
Sure.
So if you want me to falsify a record, so that means I would lie to you.
Right.
So if you're a liar, you're a liar. Right.
No,
so,
absolutely.
So be honest all the time with all your interactions. Yeah.
Always best.
I agree with that. So now, as a solo, as I am, tell me a little bit about how you find clients, or do they find you?
I would say most of them find me. A lot of word of mouth, referrals from other attorneys is kind of these folks, particularly in the veterans realm. Also, I'm a member of the National Organization of Veterans Advocates, and they have an online service where a veteran can look to see if there's an attorney in their area and then contact them directly. So we're going to service them for that.
That's interesting. I know if I relied on some referral service, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't say that's my only source, but that is a source.
Yeah. I'm just always interested in how attorneys find clients, marketing. Sometimes attorneys don't call it marketing. Sometimes they'll call it practice development, or something like that. But if you go to networking events, then that's my marketing, right?
Right.
I meet others and they refer me.
Exactly.
Right. So
I would say that's the majority of it. I currently don't have a website because I found that I got a lot of just general phone calls as opposed to ones that are actually targeted to what I do. And I'm always happy to try and provide those people who call me with another referral for something I don't do, but it took up a lot of my time. And so I just found that not having a website freed up time to actually do the legal work.
Well, that is interesting. And I appear on the radio, and so I encourage people to call me if they have a question. And I spend so much time things that I'll never. It's not about making money, although in the end, it's about getting clients that need my help that I can make a living helping.
And I'm always happy to help where I can.
Yeah.
But when it's taking up too much of my time,
no, I understand.
That's why I try to limit that.
Because I did notice that you didn't have a website because I tried to find you.
I'm sure you did.
For this interview, and that's not unusual. I found that attorneys don't have a website. Yeah, it really isn't.
Well, then I feel better.
Yeah, but that's the best reason that I've ever heard why I wouldn't. Especially, I guess, if you're that's a some small town that But again, it's regional, so people are looking for regional. So
Right.
if there's not, let's face it, there's more attorneys in Chicago than there is in Madison.
Yes, there is. Absolutely.
And so if you're looking for someone local, and then you would pop up and like, well, let's call her.
Right. Exactly.
You mentioned you do some real estate closings. Is that right?
I-
Closings?
Yes,
How much of your practice is that?
that's probably maybe one of them.
Is that something that you like to do?
I do. I particularly like helping first-time buyers. I like to hold their hand through the process because I remember what it was like when I was a first-time buyer, and I was really glad I had a good attorney who made it all seem not so scary. And so I try to do that for them.
I help a lot of realtors,
Huh.
and it seems there are a lot of realtors because they're independent contractors,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't really realize that they're in business for themselves. And so sometimes they have interesting issues
Yes.
about building your own business and things like that. So, I've done a lot of closings myself. Is that, if when you're doing real estate closings, talk a little bit about, you mentioned first-time home buyers and what, in that market that you are, is that most of your work, I would assume, is in that casino around it?
Again, South Suburbs.
Around it, right?
Yeah, all the way from Joliet to the Indiana border. And even sometimes in Indiana, even though typically they don't use attorneys for real estate there, people who are moving from Illinois to Indiana, they're in the habit, and I don't think they need a lawyer, they should have a lawyer. But even though it's not the norm there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because you think, as you said, not that they need a lawyer, but they do get a lawyer. So talk a little bit about that, why you think that's true. Because I agree with you.
I think that that's true because we are representing only them, as opposed to the title company who isn't really representing anybody, but they are more closely involved perhaps with the seller. And so I think it's just that extra set of eyes that is focused solely on the other party's buyer, as opposed to having anything to do with the seller. To just make sure all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, let them know about any potential adoptions, particularly in a situation where maybe there needs some repairs done, based on home inspection, that sort of thing. That always seems to be above, particularly in the I don't know why.
I always think this is a big purchase. Okay?
Probably the biggest purchase you will ever make in your life.
That's absolutely true. Until you buy the bigger home, maybe. Right. But to have some, and in the end, people think it's an expense, but really you're saving money because if you have to take someone to court because you didn't think of that beforehand,
Absolutely.
that costs a lot more money.
A lot more money than the money I charge for this.
You mentioned that you're a solo practitioner, and I asked you if you have a lot of interaction with attorneys. So in my practice, right, I work with the IRS a lot. I do some cash court cases and things like that. And I did a lot of bankruptcies early in my career. Still do some, but not that much. And so I don't have a lot of interaction with other attorneys either.
Okay.
But when you're doing veterans disability, talk a little bit about that. That's the veterans department, or talk a little bit about that.
Veterans Affairs.
Oh, affairs, yeah.
Right. So if somebody has either an injury in service or a condition that has arisen out of something that might happen to them in service, they can apply for VA benefits based on disability connected to their service. And if the VA agrees, they are paid a monthly disability stipend. They can continue working. There's no limits that they can still be working full time. Unlike Social Security, there are limits on how much money you can earn and be considered disabled. Not true with veterans.
Can you give us an example of someone that you've helped? And so, because what I'm interested in is that someone out there can see themselves and say, "That's what I need," right? So, again, without reaching any confidentiality.
Sure, of course. So, the particular case I'm thinking of, it was the spouse of a veteran, and
Interrupted. That's interesting, right? Because you think, I'm not a veteran, so this doesn't, she can't help me, but you can.
That's right.
So that's interesting. So, okay,
So
sorry.
spouses of veterans are possibly entitled to benefits in certain cases. It's called VIC, Veterans Indemnity Compensation. And it's typically when the veteran, well, always when the veteran is hospitalized. Particularly because I'm thinking of the veteran was in Vietnam and had some very bad experiences there and ended up with pretty severe PTSD that he suffered with for many, many years, and he handled that by self-medicating with alcohol and drugs to the point that it destroyed his liver, and he eventually died of liver failure. So she applied for benefits based on his death, and they said, no, there was no in-service relation to his liver failure that he died of. Well, we were, after, not kidding, 10 years, able to prove that because of the PTSD he had, which was related to his service, he had self-medicated, caused liver failure, blah, 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 and that was a service-connected death. And now she's getting a monthly benefit.
I love that story.
It's one of my favorites.
Because, again, and it does take, that attorney's on the back. But, right, it takes some connection there, an argument to say, here, well, look at this.
Right,
you know,
right.
And it's connected here and there, and this, that's it.
I really enjoyed connecting all the dots. I mean, it wasn't an easy dot connection, but it was to find all the records I needed, to go back to hospitals, and it had been at that point, 5 or 6 years after he passed away. Records get harder to find as time goes on, but we were able to do it.
What's the process there? You said the Veterans Affairs. Is that it? Did you, in that case, did you wind up talking to attorneys? Do attorneys ever get involved for the government? Because government attorneys get involved in some cases, and for me,
right.
Sometimes they get involved. They don't want to get involved, but sometimes they get involved.
A lot of it happens right at what they call agency level, where in the case of veterans jurisdiction, there are not attorneys at the agency level. They're just people who deal with the cases and determine if somebody's disabled or not. In this particular situation, we did have a hearing before an administrative law judge, and at the Board of Veterans Appeals, there are attorneys there who read briefs and write briefs and that sort of thing, but there's no director, and you have to go to yet further higher levels of appeal before there's much of that to government attorneys.
How many levels of appeal are there? Like in this case, how many levels of appeal is there?
Well, we like to call it maybe a hamster wheel, because you kind of go up and back and up and back and round and round. So we started at the agency. We had a hearing at the PBA, the Board of Veterans Appeals, and then we came back to the agency. And I think we might have gone back to the Board of Veterans Appeals, and then eventually it was. So it's up and down and up and down.
Is that 10 years?
10 years.
That's interesting. That's a great story.
Sadly, 10 years is not terribly unusual.
If that happens, are they compensated for back? Does it go backwards, or is it only can it be retroactive?
It is retroactive to the date of application, so long as it is continuously pursued. Which means I can tell where this is going.
No, I love the attorney stuff, because you've talked about this before.
Yes, I have. So continuously pursued means that they appealed the decision with any limited time frame. The time frame. They have 1 year from the date of a written decision to appeal it. They continue to do that, or there was a good cause why they didn't. Never received the letter. I think that actually happened at one point during that particular case I was talking about. That they got a decision, but don't know where they sent it, because she didn't get it and I didn't get it. So we were able to say no, we never got it. So that didn't get her off the track, but she had to start over.
As an attorney, I help people with taxes, and I like to talk to attorneys who do other administrators. I have a friend of mine who helps people with student loans.
Oh.
Right? And so when we kind of batch practices, it's interesting how, because it's the government,
right?
They're all kind of similar.
They kind of are, yes.
And so you have that same interaction. that's interesting. And of course, I've never spoken to you about Veterans Affairs law, so then it's like, oh, I've heard this story before in the tax realm.
Right, exactly. Different players, same story.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. That's good. So, if I asked you, should others become attorneys? What would you say?
You know, I hear a lot of attorneys say, I would never want to be an attorney.
I said that. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
Because of my
sorry,
board.
you have two that did. But I don't understand that, unless it's that they really don't enjoy what they do, and they're kind of projecting that onto their kids. I enjoy it. I mean, are there days that I don't enjoy it? Of course, that's true for any job I do. But overall, I really like being an attorney, and I like helping people. So if it's something that you're interested in, and you have the skills that it takes, I mean, you have to be kind of good at school, okay, to succeed, get through law school, and particularly if you pass the bar. Because again, like I said, it's fine if you go through law school, but you can't pass the bar. Kind of pointless.
Although there's lots out there. When I went to law school, I didn't think I was ever going to be an attorney.
Really?
Yeah, I wanted to run my own business,
Okay,
and now
sure.
I do. But it's a law firm.
But it's a law firm.
So I never really thought that was something I was going to do. You know, I really enjoy it too. So, and I think you're right. I guess people that I interview, attorneys that I interview, generally are solo. Not all of them, but most of them are in business for yourself.
Right.
And seem to enjoy it. And so then almost everybody I ask, would you recommend? They say yes, because they enjoy it.
Right.
And you're right. There's so many people that get attorneys, and like anybody else, who get caught in a job that they don't like.
Right.
And as you probably notice, I don't know if our audience will know that attorneys are on the high end of depression and alcoholism and substance abuse.
Yes. Well, that covers everything.
but they're on the high end.
Right.
And I guess that would tie back to what you're saying, feeling happy, and then you're more likely to think that fall into that.
I think also you have to be able to set some separation between your work and your home. You know, there's all the talk about work-life balance, but it's really true. If you don't have some separation, I don't think you can do either job effectively. Your health, your real life, and your work life. As
a solo, though, running your own business, hard to separate, don't you think?
Yes.
I mean, we separate now. As you, I don't know if you noticed, but when you came into my office here today, you met Teresa. That's my wife, right? So it's hard. It's
right. For sure, it's hard to separate in that case.
My family life. As I said, I sit with my kids and we talk about law stuff.
Right.
So,
right.
But I understand. It is. I think the hardest part for me when I first became an attorney. And first, I want to say, I think you pointed something out that a lot of people think is silly or not true. But lawyers help people.
Yes.
You know?
And I think society in general kind of forgets that and maybe lawyers do forget that that's what we're supposed to be doing. Helping people.
I just think that that's interesting, and of course that's what lawyers do. And as you said, the society doesn't always think that.
No, I think they don't.
So maybe we'll leave it there because that's so mentioned. That's I think it's before we go, talk a little bit about helping people and why that's. Because I asked you why would you recommend others to be an attorney, and you mentioned that's because you do help people. And so, if you could just talk a little bit about that area of your practice, because no matter what you're doing, whether it's real estate or veterans affairs, in the end, you're really helping people.
I think absolutely true. When I decided to go to law school, as I said, I was kind of bored with what I was doing, but the other thing was I felt like I wasn't making a difference. And I know I'm talking about like some grand societal change, just making a difference to an individual person where I can see that I have helped them, made them feel better or whatever. And so that was important to me personally, to be able to know that at the end of the day I did X, Y, Z to get that person to a better place, whatever that was. And of course, you have to be financially rewarded, otherwise you can't keep going and doing it. But a lot of times, I mean, that's not the primary, but it's important to feel that feeling of, I made that person feel better, do better, get to the next step of their life as painlessly as possible.
You mentioned that this one client that you mentioned you were with for 10 years. And then I think you said earlier that you with people are with you for some time.
Yes.
And then when you finally get to the end,
right.
Pretty fulfilling, isn't it?
Absolutely. I was so happy to be able to give her a call that day and say, got something in the mail, did you?
That's amazing. I want to thank Attorney Keenan for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I again never talked to anybody about Veterans Affairs, or it's an interesting.
First time for everything.
Sometimes something you don't think about, right?
Sure.
And that there are attorneys out there that can help you, no matter what you're doing. And if you're, and that's why I like to talk to different types of attorneys, because if you're having this problem, right, you're seeing who do I talk to,
right?
I mean, this is not something that you don't really see commercials and someone says, "Hey, I'm helping veterans. Call me." Say, where do you go?
Or if you do see those commercials, it's generally giant law firm located in big city or East Coast Florida.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's as appealing necessarily. It seems a little intimidating to me.
As a solo, you are, and you never really worked except for Cook County is a big organization.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
I never really worked for a big organization, lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of interesting. Again, we talked a little bit about going out on your own, forging your own way, and finding out what works and what doesn't.
Right.
And you found out that
sometimes the hard way, sometimes.
Yeah. And you found out helping veterans is, and God bless you. Thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you.
So thanks so much for joining us here today. I hope you had fun.
I did have fun.
I told you you had fun.
You did tell me.
So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of